Deleting a macro stored in the personal macro workbook. To delete a macro stored in the personal macro workbook, you first need to unhide the workbook. You cannot delete a macro from a hidden workbook. Once the workbook is unhidden, you can then delete the macro as normal. It's really important to remember to hide the workbook once you have deleted the macro. Do not close the personal macro workbook, because if you close it, then you will not be able to run any remaining macros on the personal macro workbook. Remember, in order to run a macro, it must be on a workbook that's currently open. In the Developer tab, if you click on Macros, you will see here the Mac currency macro is on the personal.xlsb. This is the personal macro workbook. If I click on this and try and delete it by pressing the delete button, it will tell me that I can't edit or delete a macro on a hidden workbook. So I have to unhide the workbook. So I press the OK button and cancel that window. To unhide a workbook, we go into the View tab. From the View tab, you'll see Hide and Unhide. I'm going to choose Unhide, and I can see I have only one hidden workbook called Personal. When I press the OK button, I can see now at the top that I've jumped into the Personal workbook. Now I go and delete the macro as normal. So I go into the Developer tab, go to Macros, select the macro I want to get rid of, and press the Delete button. It asks me, am I sure I want to delete this macro, and I click Yes. Remember, you are still in the personal macro workbook. Don't close the workbook, you just want to hide it again. So go back into the View tab and this time press Hide. It will hide the workbook that you're currently in. So when I press Hide, it brings me back to the Lesson 10 workbook. So now if I go into the Developer tab and I go to Macros, you'll see that now the macro called Mac Currency is gone. Even if I change this to all open workbooks, you can see that I have no macros available. So this is how we delete a macro from the personal macro workbook.